Thank you. Hi, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Today we are going to have a lecture on the urban forces, the political and cultural forces. What do we mean by political and cultural, and how do they affect the form and the shape of the city? So we'll start with the politics. طبعا the influence of politics is visible in major cities, especially طبعا one of the most well known is Paris, with the Haussmann's grand action to create the boulevards through Paris. And it's also visible in the skyline of New York City, which is very much affected by setback requirements. So we have two types of actions that can change the city shape. The first one is grand actions like master plans, grand interventions in the city, or the small actions that are embedded in the building regulations and laws. So we have to look for these two issues at the same time: the grand actions and the small actions, or the actions that are related to building codes and regulations. We have two influences: high-level government planning, which are mostly taken by the government, and a second one is a more or less cultural action that is taken by community activists who ask the government to do something for them. This is a view of Haussmann's boulevard through Paris, and this grand plan gave Paris its distinctive identity and distinctive character, with all low-rise buildings and continuous street facades, boulevards that are connecting the different parts of the city with each other. These streets or these boulevards were not there before. They were created to connect the city with the palaces and the monuments of the city. This is a plan showing how the Arc de Triomphe is a central part of the central attraction of the city, connected to all the boulevards there. This created very distinctive identity for the streets, with continuous facades, street width, very intimate human scale, and identity that cannot be mistaken. Even it was copied by other cities during the 19th century to imitate the success and the character of Paris. In New York, the building regulations require that the setback is to be provided with the height of the building, so that it provides light and sun to the streets below. So what you see in New York of these tapered top buildings, this is part of the building regulations. It required this, and that also created terraces on the top. It's not just a design intention or a design interest. It is part of the building regulations that shaped the city. Another famous grand action that is done was the design of Washington, D.C. and the creation of the big mall in the middle with the Capitol, the Congress and Senate here, and the White House and the obelisk in front of it in the main garden, and Lincoln Memorial, Abraham Lincoln Memorial on the other side. طبعا Jefferson Memorial was supposed to be part of this grand plan, but it is related to it, but divided by a water element. This is the view of the Washington Mall. We see here the Congress and the Senate and the representatives. We see the White House in front of the obelisk, the Washington obelisk or the Washington Monument. And here is Abraham Lincoln's memorial. And these are all museums around the mall. Space Museum, Modern Art Museum, Extension by IMT, and many other museums are built here. So this is the nation's attraction over there. This is another important building, the Pentagon, the Department of Defense or Ministry of Defense in Washington. And it is related to the shape or the number of forces, the Marines, the Air Force, and so forth. They have 5 different divisions, and it's a pentagon shape. Now, this is also one of the famous buildings, the Boston City Hall, which is also an illustration of the politics of the city and how it attempts to attract people to interact and to be part of the decision making. So the ground floor is open with open columns, and it has terraces and stairs inviting people to be part of the decision making. These are the plans of the Boston City Hall, and this is the upper floor plan where it has offices and so on. Are you all following?
Yes. Yes.
Everyone there?
Yes, doctor, we're here.
Okay, great. So now we will take this idea of how politics impact the shape of the city and reflect on the case of Jeddah, how it evolved to be what it is to be today, and how did politics and culture affect its shape and growth and development and positives and negatives of the urban environment there. We will focus on how has the city been shaped by its politics. Are there large infrastructure projects that have shaped the city? When were these built, and what sort of government was in place during these major undertakings? The city of Jeddah is located on the west coast of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It's a latitude 29.21 and longitude 39.7 east. And it is about 12 meters above sea level. It's about 950 kilometers from the city, the capital city of Riyadh, and about 80 kilometers from the holy city of Mecca. So it has a very close proximity to this significant religious center for the Muslim world, which of course affected its identity, its growth, its urban environment, and many other things, as we will see. The urban boundary is about 1,765 kilometers square, and the total area of the municipality is 5,460 kilometers square. And as we all know, the city is hot and dry, desert climate, 28 degrees in the winter time, the average year, and in the summer it reaches 40 degrees and more. It receives annual average rainfall of 54 millimeters during winter and spring. These are illustrations of the location of Jeddah, of different views, and how it is related to the rest of the kingdom, and how it is tied to Mecca as the entry point by air, by sea, to the holy city of Mecca. So that it creates an important connection between them. We also need, whenever we study a city or try to understand a city, we have to look at the population, how the population is changing during the years. Before the 1970, most of the population was predominantly rural. After the 1970, the region witnessed rural-urban migration. So people started to be attracted to the city to work and to have better life opportunities. The population grew rapidly. It was about 1 million in 1970, to 1.4 in 86, 2 million in 93, 3.4 in 2010, and 4.1 million in 2015. In terms of city growth, this is 400% since it was in 1970. 50% of the population in Mecca region are in Jeddah. 3.8% of the population rate per annum, which is growth, which is considered to be high. 30% of the total population of the kingdom reside in Jeddah. Urban population density is about 5,400 per kilometer square, and the average household size is 5.2. Jeddah is considered to be young population. We have new young generation in living, mostly residing in Jeddah. 41% is below 24 years old, 50% is below 30, and only 3% are 65 and above. The ratio of male to female is 1 to 1.27, 60% Saudis and 40% non-Saudis. And this is also a significant composition in the city of Jeddah that affects its urban environment and especially housing. This is a graph that shows the increase in population and the increase of number of households in the city. We can divide the period of development to several stages. Is everyone there?
Yes, doctor.
Yes, we're here.
Yes, we are here.
Yes, doctor.
Okay. Right.
Yes, doctor.
Yes,
Okay.
doctor.
I'm making sure that you are all there. Okay. Now we'll start with the different stages of development of Jeddah. And we will start with the stage between 27 and 1907. Jeddah was in antiquity a fisherman's hamlet. It was a port along the Red Sea, where fishermen can rest for a while. It had a gulf that boats can rest and stay in a quiet area during the fishing trip. So coming from the Red Sea south to the north, it was a good place for fishing and resting. There is evidence that it dates back 3,000 years ago as a resting place for fishermen. During that time, there was a tribe called Qad'a, which was settled in the area. Some historians say that maybe the name Jeddah came from the name Qad'a, and just an inference. طبعا the major change happened during Caliph Uthman ibn Affan in 647, when he ordered the city to become a port for the pilgrims coming from the sea. So it started to become associated and be part of the action happening in Mecca during Umrah and Hajj seasons. The Portuguese went all over the world to have, they had very strong fleet, and they took several parts in India, in the Gulf region, in many parts of the world. They also were interested in taking Jeddah to control the Red Sea, but under the Mamluk Prince Hussein al-Kurdi, he ordered the construction of a wall around the city to protect it from the Portuguese invasion. After that, the kingdom went through several stages of development, and it became unified in 1932. If you think about the First World War and the Second World War, you also have to connect what happened in the region with these important wars. The discovery of oil was before the First World War, and there were some expectations to find oil in the east or the west of the kingdom, and this also affected the war itself and the revenues afterward. So after things settled in the Second World War and the Allied forces won the war, and they started to excavate for oil, and oil became a major source of income. So the city expanded rapidly. It's doubled in population, and but was still within the wall that was created to protect it from the Portuguese. This happened until 1947, when the wall was demolished. The wall was demolished, and it was clearing the way for the city to expand and go outside the wall. And this is a turning point, or a turning year in the history of the city. So it was, the city started to grow outside the wall, and slowly, but until the 1973 war, when the rapid rise of the prices of oil happened. We can divide this stage into two main stages. The first is until 45, when the city was still inside the wall, and the population was about 10,000 to 25,000. And the revenues were mainly from commerce and service of the pilgrims. So this is an image of the city of Jeddah in 1938. The city was surrounded by the wall. Yes, there was increase in population, but the increase was mainly vertical and not horizontal. So the city aimed at protecting its citizens within the wall. The revenue طبعا from commerce and service of pilgrims was very little, and it was not stable. It depended on the number of pilgrims visiting, and it was affected طبعا by the wars, the First World War and the Second World War, and any conflict in the region, as we will see in 56 and 73 and 67. All these regional or international events affect the flow of pilgrims and visitors. So the development went slowly, and socially, educationally, health, economic, and physically also. So the urban fabric remained traditional in character, organic fabric, narrow streets, mainly animal mode of transportation. There were no cars yet. The wall had 4 main gates connecting it to the main roads or travel roads outside. Architecture was vernacular, multi-story, 4 to 7 stories, built with local materials, coral stones, mud, stuff like that, wooden lattice for mashrabiyas, which is also convenient for the environment and the heat. As we see here, the wall was surrounding the city, and there were 4 gates to connect it to the outside world. So this was the urban fabric of the city until that time. These are some pictures of old Jeddah, showing the gates and the souks and the market. And you still see some traces of this in the al-Balad until today. The second period of this pre-boom period, as we call it, happened after the Second World War. Things started to clear back, and opportunities for development and growth happened all over the world. طبعا the kingdom started to receive oil revenues in 1946. The first revenue was about 10 million US dollars, and it continued to increase to up to 280 million US dollars in 56. And when we talk about the US dollar at that time, at least you multiply it by 1,000 of what it can do now. Jeddah طبعا was one of the first cities to receive the attention of the kingdom and benefit from this economic boom as a major gateway to Mecca, and was the capital of the country at that time. طبعا again, when we had the closure of the Suez Canal in 56, there were difficulties, and the city started to look for assistance. What should we do to accommodate the increasing population and to benefit from the economic prosperity? So they asked the United Nations to nominate some people to help in the planning of the city. So the United Nations appointed Dr. Abdulrahman Makhlouf to work on this project and to develop the first master plan in 1962. This is when we, inshallah, will talk about Kuwait City. Kuwait City had its first master plan in 1952. So this was considered late a little bit for the development of the city. And the main features of that first master plan remain until today. It focused on the linear pattern of the growth of the city, the location of the airport, the direction of the main motor transit ways going north and south, and the adherence to the old city shape and create ring roads around it. And of course, the benefit from the seafront by creating a corniche for the city. And these features remain until today. They are the main features of the city. Can you all see this master plan?
Yes.
Everyone?
Yes, we can.
Yes, you can see.
Okay. Okay. So this is the first master plan developed by Dr. Abdulrahman Makhlouf. And as you see, it started from the Al-Balad, the old city, and created ring roads around it, and then started to stretch the roads northwards toward the airport. So we have the airport, Al-Balad, the old city, Al-Corniche. Al-Corniche is becoming a very important attraction, directing the cities north and south, and then east and west secondary roads, and the linear pattern dominated the city design. Towards the south, we have some industrial areas and service areas, and towards the north, it was more housing and residential, and the airport area. If we, as we will do later, we look at how the city evolves today, we'll find that the same main features of this master plan are still there. By 1971, Jeddah was a diplomatic center of the kingdom, headquarters for the Saudi Monetary Authority, and a center for professional, scientific, skillful employees. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs was built in Jeddah, and all embassies and consulates were built, and some of them are still in Jeddah, even after Riyadh became the capital of the country. So it's expanded rapidly under a first 5-year national plan, which started from 1970 to 1975. These national plans are an important governmental instrument to develop the country and develop the cities and the economy and the population and everything. Fine. We are here now going to start the boom period. So before we continue, do we have anyone has any comments?
I don't think so. I mean, everything is very clear.
Okay. Anyone else? Do you have any comments on what we said so far?
No, everything is clear, Doctor.
All right. Okay.
I just
Right.
have a question.
Yes.
We see a difference in the pattern around Jeddah and before the design of Makhluf.
You see why?
Is there a
What?
difference in the pattern? Is there a difference in the pattern of design after they demolished the fortification and before the design of the rest of Jeddah?
I don't understand the question. Can you repeat that?
I'm asking, is there a difference in the design pattern of Jeddah in the area between demolishing the fortification, and do we see a difference in the area surrounding the fortification? Will it continue the same design?
Before they demolished the wall, everything was happening inside the wall, and buildings started to grow vertically in order to be always protected inside.
Yeah.
After they demolished the wall, there were some informal developments and expansion, but the first master plan put everything in place, and they started to follow the construction of the roads, the infrastructure, the distribution of land uses and functions in different parts, and so forth. And between those two periods, there was no significant urban change. The old city remained within the boundaries of the old wall, and the new city started to grow outside.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, welcome. Now we'll go to the boom period, which is between 73 and 83.
Doctor, I have a question.
Yes.
What is a design approach or planning approach taken in this case?
In the case of Abdurrahman Makhluf?
Yes.
This
there must be a
was
different approach.
Yeah, this was a typical mid-20th century practice. Inshallah, when I show you the master plans of other Gulf cities in the next lectures, and compare the first master plans of these cities, you will find that this was a typical master plan. And if you also think about Ebenezer Howard's theory, you will also find it here. Roads for automobiles, everything is based on the automobile, the transportation. These roads are mainly made for cars to transport things from one place to another. The zoning, you have a zone for housing, a zone for industry, a zone for commerce. These were, and then you have a neighborhood design. It has housing, and inside you have schools, you
So
have
we could
mosques.
say it's a 2D approach.
The what?
So we could say it's a 2D design approach.
Urban planning is usually 2D design approach, but when you go to urban design and architecture, you start to consider the third dimension. But urban planning is more concerned with the economy, the population, the resources, and how to benefit from the land to make most income. Urban planning is not an architectural discipline. You'll find many urban planners do not have any architectural or urban design background. Urban planning is has influence from economy, from resources, from population, and many other things. So the master plan is only an expression of how the land of the city should be utilized to make the most income and to have a good life for the citizens. So it has a grand picture of how this be done. And then when you go to city planning, so we have urban planning stage, we have regional planning come in above the urban planning, where cities are related to each other. We have urban planning, we have city planning, we have urban design, we have architecture, we have interior spaces, interior design. So we have different levels of thinking. Some of them focus more on the land and the resources and the economy and how to best distribute these and manage them. Others focus on the exterior spaces, exterior forms and materials, and three dimension and so forth. So this was a typical exercise of the mid-20th century urban planning of cities, and affected very much by Ebenezer Howard's the Garden City approach. Right, we'll go to the, are you all there? Did anyone
Yes.
leave?
No.
Here.
Okay.
We are here.
We are here.
Okay, okay. So let's count 1, 2, 3, each one say 1, and then another one say 2.
Okay.
2,
3,
4, 5,
6,
Where 6?
7,
8, 9,
10.
Only 7?
we're now 10, doctor.
11,
10. Okay.
11.
11. Okay.
15.
15. Wow, that's a big jump. Okay. Right. We'll go to the second stage, which is the boom period. As you see, the boom period starts with a major event, world event, which is 1973, where the Middle East War and the oil embargo by Saudi Arabia during the war, so that it's as part of its role during the war, and then the rapid increase in the oil prices, which also reflected in the economy and the opportunities to expand and grow. So there was expansion in the services, transportation, communication, health, public utilities, water, electricity, and all kinds of infrastructure projects following the master plan. The economic boom created revenues, and the government started to work in different development plans, programs, and projects. So everything was booming, and the urban sector was also a major, received major attention, and to support the achievement of cultural, historical, political fundamentals, values, and principles of the kingdom. So at that time, they started the second National Development Plan from 1975 to 1980, and considered the oil boom. So this plan was based on how to utilize the oil, the economic revenue of the oil boom in the development of the country. It was not only a physical development, a master plan, but it was a development plan, which is more than a master plan. So it had studies about population, transportation, regional socioeconomic and physical studies, and develop the physical infrastructure to support the achievement of the kingdom. it was based on 5 main pillars. Jeddah as a center of sea, air, and land communication with Mecca, as a commercial and business center, a second diplomatic center after Riyadh. طبعا it's a Hajj, mainly a Hajj and Umrah reception center, and educational, health, and cultural center. Every development plan must have some focus or some target for the area that it is studying. So the city became more attractive and more people started to come in for jobs and better life opportunities. So the population exploded in 3 years, almost doubled, and it reached over 1 million by 1983. So this is a huge increase in the number of people. 30% of government projects expenditures was invested in the city during this second 5-year plan. Water desalination, as we see them, transportation networks, the airport, expansion of the seaport, all these were happened during the boom period. The population growth rate was 14%. And this is unimaginable to have 14% increase in population. So maybe in 5 years you have double the number of people. Also, the physical environment grew from 31,000 hectares to 121,000 hectares in only 6 years. These are unimaginable increases in the size of the city. So that increase, rapid expansion required a second master plan. So now they asked for an international consultancy consortium, Robert Matthew, Johnson Marshall and partners, and they developed a plan based on the optimistic inflow of oil revenues. So this plan was grander than the first plan. It was based on the economic and commercial activities, coastline, creating open spaces inside the city like parks and areas, communication and utility. So this is the second master plan of Jeddah, and it expanded rapidly to create a new airport and new areas along the coast, and the city started to expand rapidly and create new areas for development. So the aim was to accommodate the 5-year development plan in the urban fabric of the city. So private investments started in housing, business, manufacturing, and by 1980, the growth was rapid and phenomenal in population and spatial terms that demanded facilities and services and people. In 1980, a consulting consortium, Sir Jackson International with Saudi Consult, was called to review the master plan. And the same happened in several Gulf countries. They started with a master plan, and then several reviews happened during the same period. Every once in a while, a review happens to the master plan to make sure that it is following the required expansion. This was called Master Directive Plan, so that they used to give directions to how to implement the current plan. So this is the directive plan. It does not change much of the original one or the previous one, but it gives directions of how to implement it in its place. So this is the the area, the third, or what we call the master directive plan in 1980, and it resulted in the construction of the well-known Jeddah airport, Hajj terminal by SOM, a very famous tent structure that is used during the Hajj period. And it monitored the growth of the city from Al-Balad area to other areas around the city in different times. Now that was the boom period. Now we'll go to another period which is called the post-boom period. Okay, we'll stop here. You have any questions or any comments on that period?
No. No, doctor.
Any comment?
Doctor, I just have one question. What's the duration what's the duration of the boom?
The boom period, as we said, between 73 and 85.
Okay. Okay.
This is the boom between 73 and 83, 85. This was the boom period.
Okay. Thank you.
طبعا always connect what happens in the city and the urban design and urban planning and architecture with world and regional events. Architecture is a reflection, architecture is a mirror of society and a mirror of the world, and the city is a mirror of the world. So if you link these events to world events, that's why knowing about First World War and Second World War and all regional wars and their impact on the city, you will immediately find meaningful understanding of how the city evolves in the light of these events. Always try to, that's why architects and urban designers and planners, they have to have general knowledge. So watch documentary movies, watch historical movies about this period, the First World War. We don't talk about it much in the region, but it affected us tremendously. The end of the Ottoman Caliphate and the division of its empire into smaller states, and the discovery of oil as a major energy source. These are all important parts of our history and transformation. Now the post-boom period, طبعا we had several years of السبع السمان والسبع العجاف. So we have some years of also slow and recession. طبعا the oil income continued consistently held dominant share of the total government revenues and influenced its expenditures, and it peaked in 1981-82. And then things fell steadily thereafter. فالسبع السمان انتهوا، بدأنا في سبعة عجاف. Consequently, the planned government expenditures fell to lowest level. It was about 23% below the expenditures of the previous 5 years. طبعا, when you have this fall in the expenditures, immediately all projects will stop, all infrastructure projects. This is the easiest thing: stop construction, stop infrastructure, stop maintenance, stop road construction, and so forth. So طبعا, you still have people who want to live, and they want to have houses, and the population still increases. It does not stop. So there was a huge cut in the municipality and housing sectors budget, about 50% of their planned expenditures. And this crippled the whole system to function. The population increased.
Doctor,
yes.
what is expenditure?
صرف, يعني expenditures, يعني you have money and you spend it. يعني. These are expenditures. يعني. If the population kept increasing, but many also expats started to leave the country because of the huge cuts in the expenditures. So, برضو the population composition started to change. طبعا, يعني some
Doctor,
studies.
I have a question.
Yes.
So they stopped their plan because they didn't يعني have a lot of money, يعني it costed more than they planned, or because of population?
If you go shopping and you don't have money, what will you buy? You don't have money. So the first thing is to
so
stop.
It's a financial problem. It was a financial
Yes, of course. يعني we are very much tied to the expenditures and the income of the country. What do they do to have more housing without growing the land? So they relied on what they called land subdivision. So instead of having a land that is 1,000 meters, okay, let's divide it into two houses instead of one house. Let's instead of building 2-story, let's build 4. So you increase the volume of the housing and buildings without actually having to increase the size of the city. So there was a study of the urban growth boundary. So this is the limit of the growth of the city, and let's divide the land inside and increase the number of houses and flats. So the built area doubled in the boom period in 71 to 76, and the preceding years, in the preceding 5 years, 67 to 81, increased to 11,000 hectares. So within the 4 years between 81 to 85, bringing the urban area to 22,000, reaching 39,000 hectares in 95 and 74,000 hectares by 2005. So the city still grows and expands. So the direction of growth, according to the first master plan, was north-south, restricted by the old airport in the east and the Red Sea in the west. The topography and the location of the city forced it to expand in a linear form. Opposite to Kuwait City. The Kuwait City expanded in a radial form, as we will see, inshallah, in the next or the coming lectures. So it depends on the geography and the the form of the land the city grows. In the second half, the growth was mainly northward due to construction of the new airport. And airports, they attract businesses and they attract development. And mainly we have large, low density residential land for private developers. The northward expansion continued even beyond the new airport to new vacant lands. The strategy now, as laid out in the urban limit study, is to continue this trend up to 2005. So the city became a linear form, 1 to 3, 60 meters long by 20 meters width. So it's a proportion of 1 to 3. This is how the city grew from 66 Al-Balad area to 72 to 86 to 2018. So the linear growth is still visible there. This is the result of the geographic conditions of the hills and mountains in the Al-Hijaz mountain in the back of the city. That is limit. What?
This is Corona. It's written Corona 1966 and 19. What is this? It's yani.
No, this is Jeddah. This is Jeddah city. This is not.
No, صح, it's written Corona.
So this is the plan as it is. Now we have the Al-Balad here, and we have the linear streets going north and south towards the airport, and the city even grew beyond the airport area. If you study closely the morphology of the city, you will find some remnants of the first master plan that is not completed. But you will find ring roads, remaining of the ring roads here. You will find linear roads going in this direction. You will find the Corniche. The Corniche expanded with landfill into the sea to increase its size. But the same principles apply regarding the Al-Balad, the historical center, expansion north and south towards the airport. North, you will have more housing. South, you will have more industries and trading, ports. You will have services, infrastructure. Towards the north, you have more housing, because the fresh air and it comes northwest. This is a comparison with the first master plan. If you compare between the two, you see the Al-Balad, you see the ring roads that were proposed, not completed, but you will find the main roads linking the north and south. They were not implemented completely because of the revisions and changes and second and third master plan and so forth. This is how it looks now. Main Al-Balad and its main connection towards Mecca, the east and south streets, and secondary streets from the Red Sea towards the inner part. So this is the main features of the planning of the city. So we can conclude with identifying major determinants of the Jeddah urban growth. We have primary and secondary factors. primary factors are the major elements that affect the shape and growth of the city. These are natural factors, location, mountains, sea, valley, and so forth. Economic factor, if you have money, you can spend. If you don't have money, you can't spend. Institutional factors, if you have good institutions that take care of the growth and the well-being of the citizens, it will work on developing master plans for the development of the city. طبعا planning, as we discussed earlier, who is doing the planning? What are the strategies of the planning and the vision of that plan? The last and very important element is population. All this is done for people. So the population composition, how does it change? When do people come? When do they leave? What is the impact of that on the city and its form and so forth? The secondary factors are the government intervention, land use studies, commercial business and housing pressures, influence of major urban projects and land use pattern, the influence of urban highway system on the commercial development. So these are secondary factors that also affect the shape and image of the city. With that, we end the lecture. And
Doctor, we cannot hear you anymore.
Okay, yes, we are done. Are you still there?
Yes.
Yes, doctor.
Do you have any quick question in 1 minute?
No.
Type. Please sign your name in the chat. Before you leave.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you. See you, inshallah, Wednesday.
Doctor, I just have a question about the assignment of the summary. Are we presenting or is it just or we submit the summary?
No, you just submit the summary on the blackboard.
Okay, thank you.
Doctor, and what about who didn't present last class?
Okay, I will discuss that through the WhatsApp with you and decide what time that we can we make the presentation.
Okay.
Doctor, did you date for the summary? Is it on the all of us on the same date, well, according to the schedule?
No, according to the schedule. When it's your due date to submit the. If you want to submit early, it's up to you. But if you want to submit, you should submit on your assigned date. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Doctor.
Did you take
it? If you want to submit earlier, it's okay, no problem. Yeah, we can accommodate that.
Doctor, did you take attendance in the beginning?
I'm taking attendance now. We had a Zoom chat in the beginning, and then now I'm taking attendance by taking snapshots of the names that are.
Because I came in a bit late, the link wasn't opening with me, but I wrote.
Yeah, we had some problems, yani, but I have almost everyone. I have Dima, Takhmina, Ranim, Reem, Sultana, Aya, Ghalia, Atun, Lojain, Maram, Najwa, Noura, Raghat, Shaza. Anyone missing? We'll find it in the chat. I saved the chat so that we can It's like an attendance for us. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, because I entered a bit late, so I wrote my name when I entered.
Right. Did you write your name before you exit?
Yes, I just wrote.
Type. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, doctor.
You.